Today, we are diving into a really fascinating idea. What if your friendships are one of the most powerful tools you have to protect your brain as you get older? It's a fear that a lot of us have, right? That worry that our minds just might not stay as sharp. But what if the solution isn't quite what we'd expect? Well, science is pointing to a defense for your brain that isn't some new app or a complicated diet. Nope, it's way simpler. It really all comes down to connection. It starts with a friend. Okay, so to really get why friendship is such a big deal, we first have to understand the problem it's solving. Let's take a quick look at the challenges a brain typically faces as it ages. Scientists have a name for this, of course, age-related cognitive decline. And yeah, it's common, but a group of researchers started wondering, is it really inevitable? They wanted to find out what, if anything, could actually protect the brain from all this. So how in the world do you prove that it's just the social connection that matters and not a dozen other things? Well, to figure that out, researchers came up with a pretty brilliant experiment. You could call it a tale of two rats. Their goal was, simple on the surface, but really powerful. They wanted to design a study that could totally isolate the true impact of lifelong social bonds on an aging brain, getting rid of every other possible explanation. And here's exactly how they did it. They set up two groups of rats in completely identical worlds. Same food, same little exercise wheels, same toys to play with. Everything was controlled, except for one single thing. One group lived all by themselves, while the other group lived together their entire lives. So then the researchers gave all the rats this really complex memory test. The best way to think about it is like this. It's not just about remembering where you parked your car. It's remembering you parked in section A when you went to the grocery store, but in section G when you went to the mall. See? It's all about context. And that's a skill that can get a little weaker with age. Okay, so the experiment is all set. They're testing three groups: young rats, the old rats who lived alone, and the old rats who lived together. And what they found, well, it was pretty stunning. The results were just crystal clear. As you'd probably guess, the young rats totally aced the test. And the older, isolated rats, they struggled. But here's the shocker. The social group. The older rats who had lived with friends their whole lives performed just as well as the young ones. It was almost as if their social life had literally shielded their brains from aging. The researchers' own conclusion really says it all. This protection wasn't just some minor thing. It was a powerful, preserving effect. It wasn't the toys, it wasn't the exercise, it was the companionship. And it turns out the benefits went even deeper than that. See, it wasn't just about getting the right answers. The social rats also made fewer mistakes getting there. And when the researchers actually looked inside their brains, they figured out why. Their minds were just, working more efficiently. Okay, so we know what happened, but the big question is, why? What was actually going on inside the brains of these social animals that gave them such a huge leg up? So let's start with the brain's memory department, the hippocampus, and specifically a little neighborhood in there called CA3. This spot is absolutely critical for making new memories, and, this is important, for keeping different memories from getting all jumbled up. In the social rats, this memory hub was just buzzing with activity. It looked almost identical to the brains of the young rats. But in the isolated rats, that same region was way, way quieter. So that neural energy, that seems to be a huge piece of the puzzle. All right, next up is a part of the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex. You can basically think of this as the brain's CEO. It's in charge of managing your attention and helping you make decisions, especially when things get complicated. Now here's the other fascinating difference. In the isolated rats, this decision-making part of the brain was working like crazy, total overtime, which is a sign of mental strain. But the social rats' brains, they were calm, cool, and efficient. So they weren't just performing better. Their brains were literally less stressed out while doing it. So yeah, this is a pretty powerful story about rat. But what does it mean for us? This is really where all this amazing science translates into a crucial lesson for our own lives. It really all boils down to three key things. First, social connection is this uniquely powerful force for protecting the brain. Second, and this is a big one, its benefits are separate from other good things like exercise or puzzles. You can't just substitute one for the other. And third, friendship actively helps keep our brain circuits running with youthful efficiency. The message from all this research really couldn't be any clearer.
Investing in our friendships and our social circles isn't just a nice to have. It's a critical, evidence-based strategy for keeping our minds healthy as we age.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. We spend decades of our lives planning for our financial retirement, making sure we're secure. But are we putting that same kind of thought and effort into planning our social retirement? This research suggests we absolutely should be.